Welcome to Positive Read-Ins. Today's episode is on John McPhee's The Headmaster. This is a book I had never heard of until a week ago. I happened to be in a used bookstore in Noksapyeong in Seoul. If you know it, you know the bookstore I'm talking about. It's probably one of the last used bookstores and foreign bookstores left in the city. Always has a great selection. And I came across this book. I have heard of John McPhee, never read anything by him, and certainly I never heard of this book. It's not a biography, really, maybe just a partial biography on Frank Boyden, who is, or was, the, I guess, longest serving, perhaps, headmaster of Deerfield Academy. He became the headmaster at a young age, I think 22, and he was there for 64 years and really turned the school from a failing public school into this kind of world-recognized private school that is certainly a destination that many of the elites want to get into, not only in America, but all over the world, as I know well, working with students in Asia. I found the book interesting, though, not only because Boyden is an interesting person, but it gives you a look at education, the old school education, which is quite different from what you'll see today. So I'm going to try to read, I guess, a few passages that I thought were interesting, both for the educational perspective, but also for maybe a sociological perspective. It's not, Boyden's not all, all hero. We're all celebrating him. There are some things in here that I think we can certainly, question. Some of the power, maybe political power that he had by running this school is certainly could veer on corruption. I think you could read it that way. But overall, his main goal was just to create a strong school. Again, these were all boys, and make sure that he's creating strong men to go out into the world. And in that regards, it does seem to me also that it's the total opposite of maybe of what we have in the school system today. I know people don't like to hear that, but. So he says in one part here that caught my eye, a new boy at Deerfield cannot have been there very long before the idea is impressed upon him that he is a part of something that won't work unless he does his share. The headmaster is able to create this kind of feeling in his boys to a greater degree than most parents are. And I think this is a great message here, right? Make people feel like they are part of something that will not function unless they're there doing it. How many things in our life today can we say that about? That this will not function if I don't show up, if I'm not there for it. There aren't many, and I think this is why so many people are suffering today. Not just boys, but just we need to feel like we're a part of something that requires us, that we're needed for that. And one of the ways he does this is, I think a big way that he did this was through sports. He had a lot of sport activities, a lot of outside activities, farming, so a lot of hands-on things that people were a part of. Cleaning. This reminds me of, I certainly know public schools here in Korea and certainly in Japan, students clean their own classrooms. I think that's an impressive thing that makes students really feel like they are integral, important to the school environment, that they have a stake in its cleanliness, or that they can be actually affected by its and responsible for its becoming dirty. Another one he talks about was I think the Sunday singing, which Boyden was a very religious man. Growing up, he went to church, he said sometimes like 3 times on Sunday. He would have 2 services through most of his tenure as the headmaster. And he would also have this Sunday singing, which I think is really great as well. I'm not a great singer, but I do think the act of getting together with other people and singing, it doesn't have to be a religious song, brings people together. It's fun. I think it's something that schools should do more of. But of course, I don't know, maybe it seems like a throwback, old fashioned. Another aspect that I enjoyed about this book is to see how, as time developed, people tried to move in and, they wanted to change the school. They wanted to modernize it. So, and, let's bring in the AP. Everyone else is doing it. We should be doing it. So he says here, his school today takes part in advanced placement programs, but only because the universality of the idea has forced the headmaster to go along with it. He clearly feels that an individual's development is in danger of being hurt if it is accelerated. So he thought acceleration, which is definitely what we have in today's education, right? Students taking who knows how many APs, and some doing APs before they go on to do the IB exams. He thought that all of this acceleration is very hurtful for the students. He thinks they need to spend more time building their character. And I would agree with this. I think half of these students who are doing the AP and the IB exams, they're not even reading much. Really, it's just exam prep, and it's really just very surface level knowledge about the subject, right? It's not impressive, really. And in Bowden's case, he thinks it's actually harmful. So he was against this, and you can see throughout the book, especially as he gets older, there are a lot of people coming around trying to, okay, we gotta hire these managers to help us spend less money. And he's saying, no, impossible. The school, it costs a lot of money. And if the other schools are paying less, they're lying. That might not be true, but though I imagine they are. I mean, as the admin grows, which it always does, that's going to cost more money. But so he tried to stand against all that. He wanted to have simple school structure with 4 classes. He didn't want any more than that. I did look up on Deerfield's website. Now they offer 5, and you can do a 6th that is pass-fail. Whereas Boyden said, no more than 4. More than that, you're not going to have the time to really grow through experience, which, again, I agree with this. Another thing I thought was interesting is you had people, when he did start becoming successful, you had all these people come in to see what he was doing. What was actually, did he have a method worked out? And the response to that was that, well, whatever he's doing is working, but he doesn't have a method. And he thought this was ridiculous, right? He said, if I can find this part, he said that, this, you've got to have expectations for the students. That's the important part. And expectations for the faculty. And again, you got to make them feel like they're part of something. And that's it. You don't need this elaborate system and theories. And he didn't have that. He wasn't much of a scholar. To reflect on some of his expectations of teachers, one teacher says here, the more you cooperate with the headmaster, the more he imposes on you, says a teacher who has been there for 25 years. He exacts a fantastic commitment. If you give it, he expects more. If you don't give it, he carries you, but you don't exist, which is, wow, that's pretty brutal, right? You give him everything. He wants more from you. You don't give him, he'll carry you. He'll pick up the extra that from what people aren't doing, but you're not going to be very important to him. I don't think that's probably the same way he viewed the students, but But who knows? Maybe there's an element to that. So that's pretty serious expectations on staff. Another part of this book, which I think gets into kind of just more of the interesting history about these schools, these elite boarding schools, is that at one point, this is in 1924, the school was running out of money. They were going out of business. And the competitor schools, like the rivals, Exeter and Andover and Taft, they all came together and raised money and actually saved the school. So, and after that, they said that the headmaster, he became kind of more weary of people. He became a fox. That's the word they use in here. Because he could see that some small kind of concentration of pettiness could lead to the school's destruction. And he had to depend on essentially the charity of these other schools. And you can see how it would be in the other schools' interest. They're creating an elite tier of schools. So they don't need to compete against each other. They're competing against essentially the rest of the country. The last chapter of this book has an interesting structure. It kind of goes through the day in the life of Bowdoin. It talks about the letters he wrote in his 64 years as a headmaster. He actually wrote almost 500,000 letters, averaging, I think they said 32 a day. A lot of these letters were, they just seem almost like gossip, kind of nothing, thank you letters and stuff like that. Some of them were to powerful people. I'm sure a lot of them were. He has one in here to a president, President Eisenhower. There's talk in here about how he got the laws changed, Bowdoin did, in order to let the school function as, because it was a public school, but it was having opening up dorms. So they had that law, kind of some law changed. There's a mention about a highway that gets diverted through his pressure. So I mean, I think that is questionable. Is that the kind of power you want all in one person, that they can actually change public work projects? Probably not. At the beginning of the book, they kind of joke about saying that it's a monarchy and everyone's living in Bowdoin's kingdom. I guess, but there are some good things that can come about with that kind of concentration of power. I don't think anyone would say that by the time he left the school, it was a bad thing. I think with his vision, he created a culture, a place of culture, and a place that would go on to produce other, in this case, mostly men, but then obviously it did become co-ed later, but people of culture that would have an impact on the greatness of the country. At the end of the book here, he actually goes through this old letter that he found that he wrote himself to himself, or something he wrote down. It says, he wrote, "The object of the school should be the development of character, to help each pupil to do that for which he is best suited," he reads. "This can be done in the country because the comparatively small numbers make it possible to do much personal work, and the relationship between pupil and teacher becomes more intimate. Not bad," he says. "I was ahead of things, wasn't I? I didn't know I could do it." And that's where the book ends. And I think it's an interesting way of ending, because it reflects that Bowdoin actually, in a lot of ways, he didn't know what he was doing. He was only 22 when he started this job. He didn't really know what he was doing. But he had a vision, had a simple, make students feel like they're a part of something, bring in sports, get them out, get them active. He played sports. He played on most of the teams for a lot of the times because they didn't have enough players. So that level of kind of just interaction, that's definitely what we don't have today, right? We don't have personalized, working in small numbers, building up relationships where people can feel like they can develop what they're best suited to do. Instead, we try to bend everyone to the same kind of mold that we want to see. And this is not only in intellectual growth, I would say it's also in actions, behavior. And it clearly it's not working, it's failing. So, maybe many of the things that happens in this book, they would not be able to be replicated in today's world. But I think many could. And I think that's, reading this could give that inspiration, and maybe that's something we can aim for. So it's an interesting book. If you're interested in education, if you're interested in history of education and how schools have changed, public and private, this will give you some insight. Let me know if you've read it, what you think about it, and your experience of education. Thank you.